What is going on, y'all? Riley here, and today we've got a new episode of Hot Singles, so stay tuned. Alright, welcome to the first episode of Hot Singles for the month of September 2020. And we've got some cool new issues to talk about this week. If you're new to this show, this is where I talk about my thoughts on some of the hottest new single issues that come out every single week. We got issues from this week, DC, Dark Horse, Image, and Marvel to talk about. But before talking about all of those, I want to give a huge shout out and a giant thanks to my Patreon subscribers. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for helping me to make this channel better. If you enjoy what I do on this channel and would like to help me out, then go ahead and click the link down below in the description. You can go over to my Patreon page, see all the extra contents and stuff that I have to offer over there. And then, most importantly, the benefit is you get to help me to make this channel better. As well, I wanted to give a huge shout out to the other channel that I do awesome work on with a ton of awesome YouTubers, and that is the Omnibus Collectors Network. If you're not familiar with that channel, basically we do several shows every single week, live shows where we talk about manga, video games, comics, anime, television, movies, all kinds of geeky stuff. We talk about it all on there and we have a great time. So if you enjoy what I do on this show, definitely check out the Omnibus Collectors Network. And if you're new to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below and hit the bell so you're notified of all the awesome new content I put out every single week. Now let's get started talking about this week's new comics. There was some cool stuff that came from DC, new issues of like Batman and the Dreaming series that I talked about in a previous episode, but the main issue that really drew my focus this week, and probably the biggest highlight of all the comics this week, was the Rise and Fall miniseries, the Hellblazer miniseries from the Black Label line over at DC, written by Tom Taylor with art by Derek Robertson. This was a complete surprise to me. I'm a big Constantine fan and I'm a big Tom Taylor fan, but I honestly completely forgot that this issue was coming out. I forgot that this miniseries was happening, and I didn't know what to expect because DC has definitely been really hit and miss with Constantine over the last several years since they ended the Vertigo series. Every DC series has been up and down in quality. The most recent one by Cy Spurrier has been fantastic and really felt like a true return to form, but unfortunately DC has not renewed the contract to have Cy Spurrier come back after 12 issues. So it looks like that series is going to be ending pretty soon. Now, in the meantime, we have this Black Label miniseries, which means it's printed on a larger magazine format. The issues are square bound, and it is a mature reader series. It's going to be 3 issues long, with every issue being about 50 pages, so it'd be equivalent to about 6 normal-sized issues. The series, like I said, is written by Tom Taylor, and it follows at the beginning, we see the birth and the early childhood of John Constantine, which is something that doesn't really get explored too much. So it was really interesting to see that take on the character, and then events that happened during his very early childhood wind up impacting things that happen down the line when he is an adult. And so we skip forward, and there is a big kind of murder mystery that's happening that involves Constantine and a character that he knew as a friend whenever they were younger. So it is a very intriguing, like, horror murder mystery type series. I'm really loving it so far, and I've seen a lot of other people, a lot of friends and stuff that have been talking about the issue as well, and it seems like across the board everyone is loving this series. So if you are a fan of Constantine or a fan of Tom Taylor, or the idea of kind of a horror or thriller mystery is intriguing to you, then definitely pick this issue up. It's going to be only 3 issues, and I believe that each one of them will wind up being available via in-stock trades if you're interested in picking that up. Those Black Label issues are really good filler for your order if you're trying to hit that $50 mark. So check that out, but there will be a hardcover edition coming out down the line as well. I'm really anticipating the further issues that come from this series, and this is probably so far the strongest first issue of a Black Label series that I've read, and I've read most of the Black Label stuff, so that's a pretty big compliment. And honestly, I'm looking forward to the second issue of this more than I've looked forward to most monthly issues of anything in a while. So big praise from me. Check it out. I hope that if you do decide to read it, that you enjoy it. If you're a fan of Constantine and old Hellblazer stuff, then I think you'll probably wind up enjoying this one pretty well. Let's see. From Dark Horse, there was one issue that I read this week, and that was the second issue of the Alien original screenplay adaptation. This is a comic adaptation of that screenplay before the Alien movie got made, so there's a lot of differences that happen in here than what wound up happening in the actual movie. The first issue I did a review of several weeks ago, and I didn't have a lot that I could say about it because it is so different in that first issue from what we got from the movie that it was hard for me to really make a solid impression on it. The second issue starts kind of following more what we eventually did get from the script of the film. The biggest difference being the characters and the alien is very different from the xenomorph that we wind up getting in the film. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the latter half of this miniseries and seeing all the differences and stuff that it has from what we wind up getting in the film. So I'm excited to see how that plays out and then talk about that on this show whenever it is completed. Other book from before I talked about Marvel that I wanted to talk about is the Sex Criminals Sexual Gary one-shot special issue over at Image, and this is one of the funniest issues that I've read in a long time. Fair warning, it does follow a pansexual porn star, so if that doesn't sound interesting to you, if that sounds like something that would turn you off, then definitely don't read this comic. I wouldn't recommend this unless you are already a Sex Criminals fan. If you were following Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky's Sex Criminals series, then you do not want to miss this issue. It gives a lot of background on the character of Sexual Gary, and his background is just as hilarious as you would think it was going to be. It's very explicit but very hilarious from the front to the back of this issue, and like I said, if you're already a fan of the Sex Criminals series, I highly recommend picking this one up. It is a great one-shot with a hilarious story and great artwork throughout. Now, moving over to Marvel, there was a couple of new #1 issues that I want to talk about, but first I want to mention the final issue of Empyre. I've been very open about saying I honestly don't feel much for this event. It's kind of the most boring event that I've read in a long time from either Marvel or DC, which is really surprising to me because Al Ewing, who is one of the two writers of this event, is so fantastic, and literally his entire catalog of work for Marvel has been positive for me, especially work like The Ultimates and Immortal Hulk. But then we get this event and it really seemed kind of pointless overall. And I know we've still got a few Aftermath issues, so my plan is to, after those Aftermath issues pop up, I will read the entire event and a lot of the tie-ins and stuff. Not all the tie-ins, because that's overkill. But I'll reread a lot of the event and some of the tie-ins to have a better opinion on it, and then make a review video specifically about Empyre, just to tell everyone whether or not it's worth picking up, especially because there is an omnibus edition that is going to be coming out, I believe, next year. So I want to be able to give some proper thoughts and let people know whether or not this is going to be worthwhile. As for now, I can still say probably no from me. It's not really the best event, but that might be hindered by my lack of understanding of classic Avengers storylines like the Kree-Skrull War. So if you are a classic Avengers fan and you had read Empyre or have been reading Empyre, let me know what you think, because I'm very curious about that. So the two new #1 issues from Marvel, there was Marvel Zombies Resurrected and Black Widow by Kelly Thompson. Now, Marvel Zombies, I've read pretty much every Marvel Zombies issue, every Marvel Zombies miniseries since the beginning, since they first popped up in Ultimate Fantastic Four. And I've enjoyed most of it. There was a lot of really fun and really interesting stuff that came out of Marvel Zombies, and then we've taken a long break from that kind of stuff, and now we get Marvel Zombies Resurrected, which is a completely new take on the Zombies franchise. I don't know exactly what made Marvel decide to pop up with a new Marvel Zombies series now, but here we go. It's written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, whom I've read a couple things from, and honestly, I've been really lukewarm about him so far, so I wasn't really anticipating that I would feel any different about him in this first issue. And yeah, honestly, nothing has really changed. This issue didn't do much for me. It's a very different take on the Marvel Zombies franchise. It's clear that he wants to go in with a very fresh look and not piggybacking off of things that we've seen before, which is nice because they've kind of done Marvel Zombies to death with the previous continuities and stuff. but I don't know, it's not the most interesting take. The artwork was fine throughout the issue, and it's definitely a different version where we're following more the survivors, whereas the previous Marvel Zombies titles were mostly focused on following the zombies and what they are doing in this new zombified version of the Marvel Universe. And then eventually it turned into following, Armor, I think, as they were getting involved with going into the alternate dimensions and stuff like that, and dealing with the zombies as they started coming into the main 616 universe. But in this one, we're following a small group of survivors that are part of this zombified version of the Marvel Universe. We don't get a lot of information about what happened to turn the Marvel Universe into what we see here, but, you know, we're thrown in the middle of it, kind of like, I'd say comparable to the way that The Walking Dead works, where at the beginning we would see Rick Grimes wake up and all of a sudden the entire world is different. The same kind of thing happens at the beginning of this issue, and there's just no explanation for why, which is fine. I get that, you know, if they do want to give the explanation, it's probably going to be a big thing down the line, but I don't know, it didn't really do much for me. I'll follow the rest of the miniseries just to see how it turns out, but for Marvel Zombies fans of the older titles, the original stuff written by Robert Kirkman and the follow-up stuff by Fred Van Lente, this might not wind up being up your alley. And finally, the first issue of the new Black Widow series. Obviously, we're getting a new Black Widow series because the Black Widow movie is going to be hitting the theaters pretty soon. I think, October, November, something like that. It was delayed from summer, of course, due to everything that's going around the world. So we're finally getting that released in theaters soon, and with it, we are getting a new Black Widow title. The previous Black Widow title was a Jodie Hauser miniseries, which was pretty good stuff, and this one written by Kelly Thompson, whose work I have really enjoyed throughout her career over at Marvel. This first issue was kind of a mixed bag for me. I really appreciate what she's going for here and appreciate the look of the series. Elena Casagrande, by the way, the artist for this, is fantastic. Her work on this issue was amazing. Thompson, though, is kind of going in a different direction with the character. The issue starts out with her kind of wrapping up a mission with Captain America and Hawkeye, and there's some weirdness that's happening between Hawkeye and Widow, and it goes into her going home to her apartment after this mission, and someone apparently has broken into her apartment, and very soon we see something happen. We don't know what, we don't know who, and it flashes forward to a few months from now, where Black Widow is now going under a completely different identity and seemingly living an entirely different life where she has no idea who she is. Hawkeye winds up seeing her in passing and decides something's going on with Widow and that he should probably start looking into it. So this gives us the setup for this new series. I don't know offhand if it's a mini-series or an ongoing series, but basically there's something weird going on with Widow, and her friends are going to start investigating into it to see what it is that's going on, why she's acting different, and I guess eventually we will see who's behind all of it. We do get a cliffhanger at the end that gives us kind of the villain that appears to be the force behind all of this, but I don't know, it can always be a red herring. So it was an interesting first issue. I am looking forward to seeing what happens next, but it's not the strongest first issue. I remembered back, after reading this, I remembered back to reading the first issue of Mark Waid's Black Widow series with Chris Samney, and how much that first issue blew me away. Had amazing story, amazing action. It was just a fantastic first issue. And this one has great artwork and an intriguing story, but it doesn't really take off as well as that first issue did back then. So I hate to make direct comparisons and stuff, because I know one writer is not another writer and everyone's very different, but it's hard to give this a fully positive review after just this first issue. I do have hope in Thompson's run, because she's been doing great work on Hawkeye, her old run with Kate Bishop. The run she's been doing on Captain Marvel has been the best Captain Marvel run I've read in a while, so I have hopes this is going to be good, and I've been looking forward to seeing her take on Black Widow for a little while, so there we go. And that's all I got for this week on Hot Singles. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope that I've either talked you into reading or maybe not reading some of these new issues that came out this week. If there's anything else that you were excited about from this week, please let me know in the comments down below what you read and what you enjoyed. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.